Hey guys, in today's video I thought it would be fun to kind of like reminisce and talk about how my husband and I met and our wedding day, because this week is our 15-year anniversary. And so yeah, I just thought it'd be fun to kind of share with you guys just a quick story of how we met and then how our wedding day went and where we went on not our anniversary, on our honeymoon. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start at the beginning. And I just wanted to say really quick, if you hear weird noises in the background, I don't know what they're doing outside. I kind of peeked, I can't really tell, but it's some sort of road maintenance thing, so they're kind of being noisy. So I hope you guys can't hear it, but that's what it is. I have no control over it. Okay, so how me and my husband met, we met online. It was a dating website for people who are Christian, and so it was like a religious group meeting thing. And I had met like a few people, so I had been on it. Man, I'm not sure how long I had been on that dating website. It wasn't very long. I want to say it had been like several months or something, and I had only been on two like in-person live dates through using that app, and they both kind of ended like we didn't really, it was like kind of like a mutual, we don't really like each other, we kind of just ended up becoming friends. But, you know, they were nice guys, and one of them I kind of continued to hang out with until I obviously got married and then didn't hang out with them anymore. But, so on the night that I met my husband, it was like, I don't know, like really late, like 1 or 2 in the morning, and we had logged on, and I had only seen like a couple of his pictures, and I was like, oh, okay, like he seems, you know, he's cute and whatnot. But his pictures were very small, so it was kind of hard to tell. And I remember I was in middle of a really bad cold and like a sore throat, and so I was like dying, and I really needed like Tylenol and Advil or something. And so I'm like, oh, I might as well chat online while I wait for the medicine to kick in, and then I'll go to bed. But yeah, it was late. I think it was like 11 or 12, something like that. And Lee, my husband, happened to be online at that moment, and I hadn't really chatted with him before at all. We had just, I don't even remember the terminology, I think added each other to like people we were interested in or something like that. Gosh, it's been such a long time. I don't even remember how that app worked, but it wasn't even an app, it was just a website. Apps didn't exist back then. So anyways, we got to talking and we were chatting a lot, and it just ended up, we ended up talking like I didn't even like remember the reason why I had stayed up, and I completely had forgotten about, you know, my cold and my sore throat and everything, and I just was, you know, really into talking to him. He was just so nice, and I loved just chatting with him. He was really awesome, and we ended up talking till like 4 or 5 in the morning. It was crazy. We were like, oh, we should probably get offline eventually, because I really needed some sleep because I was really sick. And we ended up, you know, talking quite a bit after that, you know, day after day. And it was interesting because the thing that made Lee stand out above all the other guys that I had talked to, it was the normal thing that I kind of just got used to, was after I would meet someone, and whether I talked to them on the phone or chat with them a lot, it was like, okay, I'll call you at some point. It was just kind of like a, if I think about it, I'll contact you type of thing. But one day Lee was just like, oh, I'm going to call you tomorrow. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I want to talk to you, like, as soon as I can. And it wasn't like a weird, I didn't get like a weird vibe from it. It wasn't like stalker-ish. It was just like, I just really want to talk to you. Like, I love talking to you. And so it was very sweet. And I remember that standing out more than anything when we were like getting to know each other and whatnot. And I was just like, wow. And he really did. Like, we ended up talking like every single day. You know, sometimes we would either, texting wasn't really, I don't think texting was really a thing. I mean, we did text, but it wasn't like what it is now. It took like a billion years to text. So it was easier to either chat online or talk on the phone, and we would just kind of go either or. So we had been talking for several weeks, and it was funny because I was not scheduled, but I had a date that I was supposed to go on that I had like made plans for before I met Lee. And it was with this guy. I can't even remember what his name was. But I was supposed to go on a in-person date with this guy. And because I was just so drawn to Lee, it didn't feel right going on a date with some other dude. And it was kind of funny because it's like, it's not even like Lee and I are official, but I just didn't feel right about going on this date with someone else after I felt like so strongly towards the guy that would soon become my husband. And so I ended up talking to that guy, and he was a nice guy. I hadn't met him in person yet, but I was like, look, I just don't feel right about going on this date because I think I met someone and I kind of want to see where things go. And he was kind of a jerk about it, and it kind of just made me glad that I canceled the date, because he was like, well, I don't think this is a good idea. Like, how do we even know this is a good guy? And I'm like, how do I even know you're a good guy? I technically don't even know you. And he was almost being like this overprotective, like, ex-boyfriend or something. But I hadn't even met him in person. And it was very weird, his response to it. Because I was like, well, you could be just as much of a creep as this other guy. So I don't see what the difference is. And I pretty much just ended up, like, not talking to that guy after that again, and I definitely saved myself from a ridiculous date, not going on a date with that guy. What happened was, it was around my birthday, I believe, when he was finally able to come. So my husband grew up in Oregon, and I grew up in Southern California, and that's where I lived when we met, and so that's why we weren't able to meet in person right away. And luckily, his sister was getting married in California, so he was coming up. So my birthday's in May, and he was going to come up for his sister's wedding a little early, so he'd be able to, you know, we'd be able to meet in person, and I could celebrate my birthday with him, and we get to know each other and just kind of see where we wanted to go, because it's really hard to know until you actually meet the person in person. But I did have very strong feelings about him, and we had, you know, video chatted, and I kind of got a feel of, you know, his personality. And I didn't really know it at the time, but I was definitely falling in love with him, like, very quickly. And so he was able to come, and I'll never forget the day we met in person. So he came to my house, and my mom was the only one that was home, and she wanted to give us privacy, let us be able to meet first, so she just kind of stayed tucked away, like, I think in her room or something. And I am like a super nervous, anxious person, and so my anxiety was just going through the roof, because I'm just like, I'm potentially meeting the guy I'm gonna marry and the love of my life and all of that good stuff. So I was pretty nervous. And when I get nervous, I get really shaky. I can tend to be a little bit more emotional, like probably cry or something. And I was just a mess. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's gonna think that I'm like a psycho. But I like made myself all nice. I did my makeup, and I'm like peeking out the window, and I finally see it, because he had sent me a picture of what his car looked like. So I would know when he pulled up, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's his car. And I, like, my legs, it's so funny, you know that expression, like, weak in the knees? I was genuinely getting weak legs because I was so anxious and nervous and just had no idea how things were gonna go. And so he comes up to the door, and I'm just like, so I think I stepped out, and we kind of saw each other, and he told me later, he's like, I could see how nervous you were. He's like, I felt like a stiff breeze could knock you over. He's like, I could tell I'm nervous, so I didn't want to make any fast movements and like scare you to death. So we kind of held off kissing right that second because we kind of wanted to, you know, sit and talk and stuff. And he's like, by the way, I thought you were gonna faint if I tried to kiss you right then and there. So we did hug, and I was just like shaking, and he's just like, it's okay, it's okay. And luckily he is a very sweet, patient person, because looking back, I just feel like the biggest dork, like looking back on that day and just thinking about how nerdy I was when we met. And so we were like kind of chatting, and I think we went inside, and I kind of gave him like a mini tour of the house, and he kind of gives me the look like, we need to kiss. Like, he's just looking at me. I'm like, okay. And so we ended up, you know, kind of like lightly. We weren't like full blown making out because my mom was in the house and that would have been weird. But we did kiss, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like, he is an amazing kisser. This is awesome. He's as attractive as I knew he would be, and just, it was just all like butterflies and rainbows. So fast forward, he meets all of my family members, and because we didn't know him, we had him stay somewhere outside of our house, just in case he was an axe murderer, but he wasn't, you know, obviously. But once everyone got to know him and saw he was a good guy, then we went ahead and let him stay in our house. But we were just trying to be safe, you know, because I knew him as well as anyone else did at the time. And then I was able to attend his sister's wedding with him. And I can't remember the timeline for when he proposed to me, but it was very fast. Like, we were engaged, I want to say only like maybe 3 or 4 weeks after knowing each other, like in person. It all went very fast. It was quite funny. But it was just crazy because we both had gotten out of really awful, degrading relationships, and we both had been with previous people that those relationships lasted 2 years, and we just happened to meet each other afterwards. And so once we met each other, we were like, this is the relationship I was waiting for, because we were both mistreated in those previous relationships, and it was just a breath of fresh air that we both clicked so well, and we knew what we wanted, and it just went really smoothly. So the proposal, I don't want to get too much into it because it was another embarrassing moment for me. It wasn't anything big, but he took me I believe it was the San Diego Temple. Yes, so our church has temples. And so it was the San Diego Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints temple. And it's a beautiful temple. If you guys are near the San Diego temple, I definitely recommend like checking it out and walking the grounds and stuff. So we went there because that was the temple that was closest to us. And we went there, and I kind of had a feeling that he was going to propose, because I remember earlier that day we were sitting on the couch, and I kind of bumped his pocket, and I could totally feel that he had a ring box in his pocket, and I didn't want to ruin it for him, so I just pretended like I didn't notice it. I'm like, I'm not going to be that guy. So I'm just like, okay, I'll just pretend like I didn't notice anything, and it's fine. So we get there, and he tells me to close my eyes, and of course he's like, gets down on one knee, and of course I'm awful and don't keep my eyes closed, and I start freaking out and crying as he kneels down before he's even said anything, and I'm just like, no, and I'm just like freaking out. Like, I'm glad no one got it on camera because it was embarrassing. I embarrass myself a lot of the times. And so of course he asks me, and I'm just like, yes, and he puts the ring on. It didn't fit, so we went ahead and had to have it resized. I still have the ring, but I very rarely wear it. Just because I found, so it was exactly what I wanted. Like, I had told him what I had wanted. It was a very simple ring. I didn't want, I'm just not a jewelry person. I'm not like a diamond person. But at the time, I just kind of went along with what everyone else did. Looking back, I wish I had just gotten something, just a plain old band. But the problem with it and why I stopped wearing it was just a very raised ring, and it gets caught on everything, and I ended up like stabbing people with it. Like, it was like everything I would do, it was like having a sword on my finger, and I'm like, okay, this is getting in the way, so I haven't worn it a very long time, but I've kept it. Fast forward, we ended up getting married on July 23rd, 2004. And we wanted to keep it simple. I'm not going to get into the details, but we weren't able to get married in the temple at the time. So we were just going to get married civilly. And we went ahead and decided, like, let's just do it at the house. Because I mean, we were both so broke. I mean, I was only 20 years old and my husband was 24 at the time. And he wasn't really working. I think he was mostly going to school. We wanted to keep it very simple because, like I said, we were both very broke. I couldn't even afford to buy Lee's ring by myself. I had some money saved, and he ended up having to help me buy it, and that's something we kind of joke about. We're just like, yep, we were so poor, I had to have a little help even buying his ring. Because at the time, I just worked at one of those, it was called Boomers. It was just one of those family fun center things where there's like go-karts and miniature golf. So yeah, I was not raking in the dough at all. We ended up having it at my parents' house. I had looked at wedding dresses, and I'm not into stuff like that. I'm not into big fancy weddings. Like, it's just not my thing. I could make a video about how I feel about weddings. I think the only thing I actually spent money on was I bought a plastic bouquet of flowers from Michael's, and that was all I bought. And then I think my parents paid for my dress, which, and I'm gonna do pictures throughout this, but my dress, oh, it was a fiasco. So I had no idea how to shop for clothing because my mom didn't really know how to shop for clothing, and I ended up just buying just whatever. It was just this random skirt, and I just used the shirt that I had worn for my sister's wedding or something like that, and then those ridiculous platform sandals. Oh, those were so, it's painful for me to look at my wedding videos because I think I look ridiculous. And then I actually went, because my sister was a hairstylist, so I just went to her salon that she worked at the time, and she did my hair, and obviously I had long hair back then, so I had like a little updo. I just wanted to keep it simple. But yeah, and then we had planned our honeymoon, because obviously we were going to go move to Oregon, so we just wanted to take a trip up to Oregon. The road trip would be our honeymoon, and so we thought it would be fun to drive through Las Vegas, and so we went ahead, and that was the plan. We were gonna spend some time in Las Vegas and then kind of check out places along the way going up to Oregon. Okay, my wedding day. This was how my wedding day went. It couldn't have gone more perfect. I just feel like it was just, it wasn't anything fancy. I wasn't wearing anything fancy, but the feelings that we had and how sure we were that we wanted to be together just made it the most incredible day. I'm gonna try not to be emotional. So we got ready. I just wanted it to be a very relaxed day. I was not gonna be a bridezilla. I would just wanted it to be a good day. So I went in the morning with my sister and got my hairdo, and I remember as she was doing my hair, I'm just kind of like chatting, and there was one of the other stylists, she's like, "It's your wedding day?" She's like, "Why are you so calm?" And I'm like, I don't know, like, am I supposed to be something else? But I just remember her saying that, making that comment. And so we get back and I get ready, and we had only invited like whatever family was nearby. Not all of Lee's family was able to attend. Like I think a few of his siblings and his mom. My whole immediate family was there because it was obviously in the house. I think the only member of my family that wasn't there was my brother, and that was because, or no, it was both my brothers. They weren't able to go because one of them had just started boot camp because he signed on with the Air Force, and then my other brother was serving a mission in Iceland. So my two older brothers were not there, but everyone else was. And then we had like a few friends. We didn't have a lot of space, and oh my gosh, it was July. So just to give you an idea, it was the end of July. California's hot in July, and my parents did not have air conditioning. So we had the whole house full of fans, and everyone was dying. We had like the doors open, everyone was fanning themselves, and we had electric fans all over the place. It was so hot. We were just, oh my gosh, I just tried to ignore how hot it was and just try to be in the moment. So anyways, yeah, so I like walked down the aisle and everyone's looking at me, and it wasn't really an aisle, it was just my living room. And my father was the one who performed the ceremony, because he was legally able to do that. And as we're like saying, you know, we didn't have vows. I didn't want to write my own vows, so I just had my dad have us do the repeating whatever thing. And I'm just like losing it. So some of my pictures, like I do that lip thing when I'm sad where I'm kind of like I can't help it sometimes when I'm like holding back emotion, my lip kind of does that little pouty thing. So some of the pictures I'm like I can't do it because it's so ridiculous. But we were just like, both Lee and I were just like kind of crying, and just the whole vibe in the room, like everyone felt it. Like it just felt right, and it felt like it was just a very, it's really hard to explain. It was just a very palpable feeling, like in the room, that it was like we were meant to be together, and it felt right, and we were just so much in love, and it was just the right thing. And then we went in, and he's, you know, kissed the bride, and we just full blown go for it, and I'm just, I could have like pounced on him, and you know, we just kind of kissed for a minute, and we were just like, oh, it's done. And we didn't go anywhere. It wasn't really like, oh, we're going to the reception. Like we pretty much just stayed there, and some people brought, like, it was kind of potluck style. People brought some food to share. I remember I didn't even eat anything. I did not eat anything because I was so like, oh, let's take pictures, and oh, let's do this. And it's like you kind of just get in bride mode where you're just like all over the place. And we had a few people say a few things. It wasn't anything real big. It was just very simple, and I was very happy. And I had already had my bags packed and stuff, so we were just like, can we get out of here already? I'm ready to get on the road and get going. So I don't even know what time we left, but we had a hotel like halfway to Vegas that we had booked, so we didn't have to drive very much that night. I think it was like a Motel 6 or something. I don't even know the area that we stopped in, but we stopped there, slept there for the night, and then the next day proceeded to go to Vegas. Now my honeymoon is quite a funny story. So Vegas, anyone who has been to the desert at any particular time knows how much hotter it is even than California. But we were there at the end of July, and yeah, it was quite interesting. So we had kept a bunch of things from our wedding. Like I think my mom had bought it was like the guest list, and it came with like this fancy like feather quill pen looking thing, and she was like, oh, you should keep these. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And we actually did have someone record our wedding, but it was on like a VHS, so I don't really have any way to add it to this, but it was really awful quality anyway, so you wouldn't want to watch it anyways. So we're driving, and we didn't really think to wash the stuff off, because right before we left, they did that thing where they like write on your car and do like silly string and stuff like that. And we made the mistake of leaving it on there and driving through the desert. So the sun just cooked the stuff onto our car, and it was like impossible to wash off. It was kind of hilarious, but kind of frustrating too. I felt so bad because it was Lee's car. Then we get to Vegas, and he's like, okay, like let's get into the hotel. And I think we ended up staying at Buffalo Bills. Yeah, so it's not actually on the Strip. It's a little bit further, and so it's cheaper. So we stayed at Buffalo Bills, and I'm looking at all the stuff in the car, and I've been to the desert many times. We would visit Arizona a lot growing up, and so I know that if you leave certain things in the car, they can melt. Absolutely, they can. My husband wasn't as aware of this because he grew up in Oregon. So it was kind of funny. So I told him, I'm like, we need to get this stuff out of the car, otherwise it will melt. And he just kind of laughs off. He's like, what? It's not gonna melt. It's totally fine. I'm like, Lee, this stuff's gonna melt if we leave it in the car. It's like over 100 degrees here. He's like, no, it'll be fine. We'll get it afterwards. So we check into the hotel and I don't remember if we like stopped to eat first, but we were away from the car for a bit. We come back and we're unloading the stuff. The tape that filmed our wedding was melted and like this, like totally caved in. The pen, the quill thing was melted and completely destroyed. And I'm like, I told you. I think that was like our first official fight. I wasn't that angry, but I'm like, I told you, all of my stuff is ruined, and now I don't have these memories. And oh my gosh, it was just, I couldn't believe that he didn't listen to me. I'm like, come on, I know about the desert, things melt. And he's just like, I'm sorry. And it was just so frustrating. I'm like, we could have saved this stuff if we had just taken it into the hotel right away and it wouldn't have melted. So we had crap all over our car melted, and then we had stuff inside of our car that was destroyed and melted as well. So it was funny. For the most part, our honeymoon was great as far as like sightseeing and things like that. But again, it was hot, like really, really hot. And I had only just turned 20, so technically I wasn't old enough to gamble. And we don't believe in gambling anyways. I think gambling, if you really ask my opinion, I think gambling's dumb and it's incredibly boring. You just sit there and waste money. But besides that, so if any of you have been to Vegas, you will know that they strategically make it so you're kind of obligated to sit in front of a slot machine. They're very smart about it. That the only places to sit are in front of slot machines. They don't do, it's very purposefully done. It's not by accident. So being a person that doesn't like the heat anyways, I was exhausted, like walking around, and it was like so hot because we kept having to bounce from place to place, and some of the not museums, some of the casinos weren't attached to each other, so we had to go outside to go from one to the other. And I'm like, it's so hot, and I'm just like complaining and dying, and he's just like, come on, and he like practically had to hold my hand and drag me. And then we get inside of these casinos, and there's nowhere to sit. But if I want to sit, it has to be in front of a slot machine. And so I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I just want to sit down. But every time I went to sit, they're like, we need to see your ID. And I'm like, ugh, I'm like, fine. So I literally had nowhere to sit because every dang casino, the only place to sit was in front of slot machines. But because I was 20 and not 21, I couldn't sit there. So that was like the frustrating part of our honeymoon, was the fact that we chose Vegas when I wasn't old enough. And I'm just like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. But it was really cool. I'm kind of bummed because I didn't have a digital camera at the time, so I don't have a lot of the photos I took from our honeymoon, but we, went to, I don't know, what are some of the big ones? I remember we went to the Venetian and the, gosh, I cannot remember all the names, but we went into a lot of the more famous ones. We didn't have the money to go to any actual shows, but you almost don't need money to go to shows, because in the casinos, sometimes at certain times, they'll all actually put on a little show in the casino, and it's actually kind of neat. I don't even remember what kind of things they would do. Some of it were light shows, or some of it was quick magic shows. But it was pretty cool. So then after we were done, kind of, doing our thing in Vegas, we drove up, and I think I visited, it was in Monterey, California. We had driven up to there and visited my brother that wasn't able to go to my wedding. He was the one that was in the Air Force in boot camp or whatever. So we visited them on our way up, and then eventually got to Oregon. And I remember being so frustrated because I ended up getting sick, really sick. And we ended up, so we didn't have our own place because, again, we were poor. I've said that a million times. So we lived with his parents. And so I was just sick for a while, but it was pretty neat. I was very happy with how our wedding went, and I was just glad that everything went smoothly and we were able to drive up to Oregon. And then we ended up staying with his family for a short while, and then we got our first apartment when I was pregnant with our first son, the one that had passed away. So yeah, that was kind of how, we met, and our wedding and honeymoon kind of went. And yeah, so we're still married, so we're doing something right. But it's definitely been great. We have definitely had our ups and downs, and everyone has their things, but we've really pushed through it, and I feel like we've gotten to a place, at this moment, we're in a place where we have just figured it out. We're not perfect, but we figured out how to communicate really well and how to work well with each other, and how to just kind of understand and be aware of the other person's needs. And so I'm very content in my marriage, and I'm just very happy that I was able to meet him and that we're married. And it's just, I could not be more grateful for my husband. It's just, it's been more than I could have even hoped for. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. By all means, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and remember to give this video a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.